So today we're going to be talking about fear, and we're going to be talking about how freedom is on the other side of fear. And I think it applies in almost all aspect of our life. And I'm excited to get into these conversations.
Freedom is on the other side of fear. I've heard you say that a couple times. Can you unpack that for me? What do you mean?
Yeah, sure. I think let me take you back a little bit, because I think it's important to understand when or where fear originated in our life. And I think it happens for most of us at a very early age. So imagine being 5 years old. You're a little kid. You're running around the house in your underwear. And your mom yells your name, and you run over, and she notices this bulge right beneath your belly button. And then 2 weeks later, you're in the hospital for a ruptured hernia. And I don't remember a ton from that day, but I remember my mom's face right before they put the gas mask on. And her words were like, "Hey, I love you, and I'll be here when you wake up." And man, as a kid, that's all you need to hear. That fear would seem to wash away. Luckily, the surgery was successful, but something happened, something that sort of changed the direction of my life. They didn't give me enough anesthesia. So the nurse, I remember it was a male nurse, he's wheeling me out of the operating room, and I woke up. And I couldn't talk, couldn't scream. I looked up, my eyes open. He looked down, he was shocked, and he wheeled me into the hallway, and he ran away. And I just remember the fear. I remember the pain, but I remember the fear. I remember just thinking, am I dead? Did I die? Like, where's my mom? So finally a different nurse wheels me into the recovery room. I see my mom, and I remember she gave me a cherry popsicle, right? So she bribed me. But hindsight's always 20/20. She said that's the day, from that moment on, I had this stutter. I had this speech impediment. This stutter affected my communication skills. It changed my outward expressions. I became very shy and introverted almost overnight. But that wasn't the worst of it. This stutter injected fear in almost every decision I made as a child. I think when you look normal, but you can't communicate, you can't talk normal, that's really a handicap. It's a disability. It's this invisible disability. And for me, that accelerated very quickly, and they forced me into speech therapy for a few years. But then even the therapist said, hey, we can't help you if you don't think you had a problem. So that stopped. But it's not that I didn't know I had a problem. I knew I had a problem. It said I was too embarrassed to admit it. And as a young child, when you go to bed with fear, when you wake up with fear, when you let fear guide almost every single decision you make in your life, you learn to live with it. It's like always there. That concept of no fear is a lie. We like to think that we're so courageous, we're so brave that we can, achieve anything we want in life. That's small percentage of the population. But I think we all have fears. And I think if we look at really what is the opposite of fear, is it courage? I tried to be courageous so many times growing up, and I failed every single time. So one of the things I loved the most growing up was football. I played in grade school. I was pretty good at it. I watched the Cleveland Browns lose to the Broncos in the AFC Championship game year after year after year. And I had this dream, this vision of playing in the NFL. And so when you're a good athlete in grade school, you'd think, and you had the dream of playing in the NFL, you'd think you should probably play in high school.
Yeah, probably.
So you'd think. But I remember this single decision I made in 8th grade, so going into my freshman year of high school, where, it was a summer, late July, and football camp started the next week. And I was getting that last, few days of freedom in the summer. So I think double started, in the afternoon, call it 2-3 p.m. I was over at a friend's house, so we're riding dirt bikes. We're having a blast. Called home, and my mom is like, hey, football practice is in a few hours. I'm like, okay. We hung up the phone. And then I made a decision that, hey, I don't need to go to practice the first day. As a freshman, to play professionally, I don't need to go the first day. So it'd be more fun to just keep riding the dirt bikes, right? So that's what I did. And then the next day I made the same decision again. And then I made the same decision the rest of the week, and then made another very rational decision. I don't need to play football in 9th grade to play professionally. I'll play next year. And so looking back, I continually made these types of decisions growing up, and actually never stepped on the football field in high school. I remember as a junior, like having this this story in our head. We play this movie in our head of how our life should be unfolding. And I remember, hey man, you gotta play as a senior. If you want to get a college scholarship to play in the NFL because you want to be in the draft, you should try to play as a senior. So I did. But I got a hernia again. I had this bulge. I self-diagnosed it. And it was probably this form of self-sabotage, which we all do. I was letting fear make a decision for me, close to earning a starting spot on the team, but I wasn't quite as good as a senior as I was in 8th grade compared to everybody else. So this fear of not being good enough, that was right there at the front. So towards the end of high school, I still had this irrational dream of playing in the NFL. Like, I want to make a living playing for the Browns, helping them win a Super Bowl. But I didn't have any money to go to college because you don't play in high school. You're not going to get a scholarship. You can't send the college recruiter your 8th grade film, right? So I had to work. I made $5.25 an hour working full time. Saved a few $1,000 to pay my first semester at the University of Akron, which was right down the road. And luckily it was a D1 school. And if I could make the team in Akron, then who knows? I might still have a shot at playing in the NFL. So I walked on as a wide receiver. Hadn't played football since 8th grade. And actually surprised the heck out of everyone around me. My friends, my family, when I made the team. Now, it didn't surprise me because I figured I would make the team. I knew I'd make the team. It was funny. You'd think I was this big bag of insecurities walking around as a teenager, but I was actually very confident. So confident in myself, my self-image. I was confident, that I could do what I wanted to do, but I had this fear. I couldn't talk like everyone else. So I think my perspective on life was that I let my handicap affect every other decision I made, including my dream of potentially being a professional athlete. So with football, my freshman year, made the team, working out in the winter, sprained my ankle terribly bad. And now I was at a higher level playing field. In 8th grade, I dominated. In high school, I was better than most of the guys on the team. At the University of Akron, I sort of blended in. And I just made that decision when I got injured as a freshman that, you know what, Greg, you're not going to play in the NFL. Like, reality set in, and then I decided to focus on business. I decided to focus on like what I could control. And that sort of led me into business and entrepreneurship. And one of the classes you had to take was speech. Now in high school, I was lucky enough to be able to talk my teachers into letting me give them the speech class. So I never gave a speech in high school. So I tried the same tact. I went to my professor and I tried to talk her into letting me, I explained the whole situation. I explained my stutter, my hernia, and my professor said, no way. She basically burned the boats, which got me excited. I finally am like, hey, you need to climb this mountain. You need to conquer this fear. It was like this huge monster in my head, but I'm like, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to slay the dragon right here, right now. So I wake up that morning. I'm psyched up. I drive to school. I'm walking into class. I'm giving myself a pep talk. I'm telling myself that I can do this. So walking in the classroom, I think I was towards the end of the class. 2 or 3 people went before me. They did awesome. I remember just sitting there thinking, man, why can't you talk like that? Like, why can't you just talk like they talk? You look like they look. You dress like they dress. But when you open your mouth, it's so different. And all these thoughts of self-doubt and fear are just crashing through my brain. But finally, she calls my name. And I walk up, and I was confident walking up. I practiced this thing dozens of times. And I start reading the speech, and I get the first, and the words were not coming out at all. Let's fast forward 2 to 3 minutes. I might have gotten through the first half of the first card, so maybe 2 or 3 sentences. And if you've ever seen anybody who stutters, who's got a speech impediment, like, it builds on itself. The muscles in the neck tighten. The palms sweat. The mouth contorts, and my mouth was contorting. And that's one of the worst things. It's one of the most embarrassing things about a stutter, is that you make these weird facial expressions that you're just trying to get a word out of your mouth, and your brain is not processing it, the right way, and it's not coming out. It's not normal. It's completely abnormal. I just remember this pain and this fear and just this pressure is the right word. And the minute I look up to the audience, everyone in the audience who's looking at me looks down. And I felt their sorrow. I felt their pain for me. And it was just this super traumatic event. And after about 10 or 15 minutes of that, I just felt this hand on my shoulder as my professor puts her arm around me and she walks me back to my seat. I sat there. I didn't talk to anybody after class ended. And all these thoughts, even walking to the car, all these thoughts of you're a loser, you're a failure. I had this juxtaposition, right, of this confidence that my parents and my sisters and brothers gave me growing up. They tell me things like, you can do whatever you want in this world. And, you have these talents and abilities and this self-belief, but then it's shattered in one moment. And all this fear, all this anxiety, all this stress, it culminated in that moment in time. And I opened up my car door and I got in my car and I drove in silence for a few minutes. And then I turned on the radio. And it's funny because this was the defining moment of my life. This was when the words on the radio triggered something inside my soul, inside my brain. The words, you can't keep a good man down. You can't keep a good man down, blared across the radio. Like God shot a bolt of lightning through my T-tops. I instantly felt this rush of gratitude. So I remember thinking, you have a girl who loves you, who I married. You have a family who loves you, who believes in you. Like all these beautiful things in my life came rushing to me. It was like a waterfall. And in that moment, I was able to find the beauty in everything around me, even the struggle, even the pain that I just went through. It tweaked in my head. It reversed. It was like, that's it. That was the thing you were avoiding your entire life. That moment of truth that just happened. That was it. It's like fear. When I say freedom is on the other side of fear, it's exactly what I mean. If we can get over the fears, if we can use fear as energy, because that's all it is. It's always going to be there. And we look at it like a negative when we should be looking at it like a positive. Fear is this thing that can be harnessed. It's this energy. When you have fear, you know you're moving in the right direction. You know you're improving. And we're happiest when we're improving in life. And in that moment, that day, I didn't realize it, but that's when I quit letting fear make decisions for me. And that's made all the difference. So I believe that the true opposite of fear is actually freedom. That when we pursue freedom in all areas of our life, we start to live a life of abundance, of joy. Many of us try to pursue happiness and love, even though deep down we know these things can't be pursued. They shouldn't be pursued. Happiness, love, it's a byproduct of experiencing the world with people we care about. It's improving in our relationships. It's our contribution. It's our purpose. It's our health. Happiness will happen when we are pursuing freedom. I think we all ask ourselves some variation of this question. What is the meaning of life? And some of us spend a lifetime trying to pursue that answer. But what if it's a lot simpler than that? What if the meaning of life is that there's meaning in life, in living, in loving, in working, in creating, in winning and losing, in becoming, in laughing, in crying, in experiencing all the good and all the bad that life has to offer. So I sit here today with you right now, and I realize that my speech impediment was one of God's single greatest gifts to me. Most people let fear influence all of their decisions. From 5 years old all the way up to college, I was like most people. And maybe even a little bit worse, maybe even a lot worse. I had to overcome fear again and again and again, just trying to operate throughout the day, just trying to get by, just trying to be as normal as possible. But I think that ability to welcome fear, to invite it in, to harness fear is what we're talking about. And that allows us to do incredible things. It can give us a weakness or it can give us a superpower. And in the end, either the world happens to you or you happen to the world. It's your choice. And that's what I mean when I say freedom is on the other side of fear.
That's phenomenal. Thank you so much, Greg, for sharing your story today. I hope that it is, I know that it will be inspiring to everyone who watches it and listens. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man.